found it. This is part 8. Somebody told me that it had a custom name, which I was like, oh my gosh, I saw one with a custom name. I thought it was maybe in the wrong playlist. My bad. This is the legend. This legendary internet Reddit hole will live in your head rent free, aka the lamp. Goodness, that was a mouthful. All right, MrBallen, let's go.
Sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction, and today I'm going to share 3 stories that demonstrate that. But before we get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload 3 or 4 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, please invite the like button to come over your house and play Mortal Kombat. And when they do, play real Mortal Kombat and uppercut them into the ceiling. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's stories. In 2013, Jim Stauffer's mother finally passed away from Alzheimer's disease at the age of 74. Her doctors told Jim that her disease had mutated in a way they had not seen before, and they asked if he'd be willing to donate her body so they could study her brain. Jim felt like his mother would want him to say yes, and so he agreed. But for a variety of administrative reasons, the neurologists couldn't actually accept Jim's mother's body. At this point, Jim was really bought into the idea that his mother's brain was going to help other patients, and so while he couldn't donate her body to these neurologists, he could donate her body to the Biological Resource Center in Phoenix, Arizona. This center would take dead bodies and then extract parts of them for scientific research, and then would cremate the rest of them and return the ashes to the family. Jim gave his mother's body to the center, and when he filled out the paperwork, he indicated that her brain should be extracted for Alzheimer's research. After filling out the paperwork, Jim left, and 10 days later, he received a wooden box in the mail that contained his mother's ashes. There was no note attached to the box explaining exactly what was done to his mother's body, but Jim assumed they did what he asked. A year later, that Biological Resource Center was raided by the FBI after accusations they were selling these donated bodies for profit. During the FBI's investigation, they uncovered that yes, the center had been doing that and had sold at least 20 bodies to the US Army for various experiments. And one of the bodies that was sold was Jim's mother. She was sold for $5,893. The FBI told Jim she had not been used for Alzheimer's research. Instead, she had been strapped to this device that resembled a chair and then had a bomb detonated underneath her. The Army was trying to understand the effects on the human body when a vehicle is hit by an IED. The ashes Jim received in that wooden box he got in the mail were only from his mother's hand. The rest of her body was unrecoverable. Also, during this FBI investigation, they found inside the center there was a man's body on the wall with a female head sewed onto it. It appeared to be a trophy. Jim, along with 19 other families, sued the center, and finally, in 2019, they were awarded $58 million in damages. The center no longer is in operation.
Okay, so just saying, like, I think that doing it without the family's consent is a big deal, right? That's not okay. Now, he made an agreement. This is what you will do. This is what I'm asking you to do. Like, use her brain for this. Okay, fine. He signed the paperwork, but he signed the paperwork to have just... He signed a contract. He signed a consent form. And it said specifically what was allowed to be done. That's it. Anything outside of that is bad form, and that's not okay. It's not okay. Because if you were to donate the body and say, here you go, and that's it, right? That's it. They can do what they want with it. But he signed a contract and he said, this is what I want. This is, what, and they told him this is what we're going to do and this is what we're going to return to you, right? So they lied. Now, if he had just donated her body and said, have fun with it, it would have been different. That was really bad of them. And I'm glad they won the lawsuit. I'm glad.
In 2004, Mitch was in his final semester at a college in Louisiana when he met another senior, a wonderful young lady named Kayla. From the instant he saw her, he knew he was in love. She played
Aw.
hard to get at first, but after several months, he won her over. After graduation, the pair stayed in Louisiana and moved in together while they got their careers off the ground.
That's
2 years
sweet.
later, the pair got married, and almost immediately, Kayla got pregnant. At the
Oh.
time, Mitch's career was really starting to take off, which allowed Kayla to stay at home and take some time off. By the time their daughter was born, Mitch was making so much money that Kayla decided to just stay home and be a full-time mom. A couple years later, Kayla got pregnant again, and by the time their daughter was 2 years old, they had their son. Mitch adored his children. Every morning before he went to work, he would sneak into their room and he would watch them sleep, and then in the evenings, they would have these big family sit-down meals and then play games together until bedtime. Mitch's life was perfect. Shortly after his son's birth, Mitch was lounging on the couch in his TV room when he noticed out of the corner of his eye the red lamp in the corner of the room. It just looked funny. It was almost like the light itself was blurry, but when he looked a little bit closer at it, the entire lamp looked blurry. And so Mitch looked around the room and nothing else was blurry. He rubbed his eyes and looked back over at this lamp and it was still blurry. He turned the TV
It's like me. My contacts, they pick a day and they decide if they're gonna be blurry or not. They just do. They're like, yeah, today we're not gonna let you see. But if just one item is blurry, that's suspicious. It's very suspicious.
He rubbed his eyes and looked back over at this lamp and it was still blurry. He turned the TV off and walked over to the lamp, and even though he was right in front of it, the lamp was still blurry. And Mitch didn't have bad eyesight.
That's
so
weird.
He's thinking, is there something wrong with me? Am I having a stroke? Do I have an aneurysm? Is there some sort of illness here that's making me see this lamp blurry when it's really not? But Mitch told himself he was healthy and that whatever this was, it was an anomaly and nothing to worry about. And so he went back over to the couch, turned the TV back on, and tried to ignore the lamp. But
I mean, it would freak me out. Don't get me wrong. It would absolutely freak me out. Like, what the hell? It would freak me out more if it was a recurring thing. Like, if it was like, okay, I went to bed or like left and came back, like that kind of thing would freak me out more. One instance is not enough for me to be like, oh my gosh, I'm dying. Well, I mean, I don't think. I haven't been through this, so I wouldn't know, but I've lived my life with crappy eyesight. So blurry, it's a way of life. It's a default setting, technically. Literally, really.
And so he went back over to the couch, turned the
Excuse
TV
me.
back on, and tried to ignore the lamp. But as he was watching TV, out of his peripheral vision, he couldn't help but notice this weird blurry lamp. And so finally, he turned the TV off again, and he turned to look at this lamp. And now, in addition to being blurry, it appeared to be upside down. Now Mitch was genuinely concerned that there was something wrong with him, because again, nothing else in the entire room was blurry or upside down. It was just this lamp. And so a few minutes later,
Was it like upside down, but still sitting on, like, okay, for example, here's your lamp, right? Here's your lamp. Was it upside down like this, still standing on the table? Or was it like the entire thing was like, it was upside down from like up here? I don't know. That would freak me out. No, that would definitely freak me out. Like, I didn't consent to go to the upside down. This is not okay.
in the entire room was blurry or upside down. It was just this lamp. And so a few minutes later, his wife and his kids came home, and Mitch decided he would not tell them about this lamp. He didn't want to alarm them.
I'd be like,
he
"Do you
figures he
see
will
that?"
get to the bottom of this blurry lamp, and then he will tell his wife and kids. And so that night, the family has a sit-down meal, and then afterwards they play some games together, and then everybody goes upstairs and goes to sleep. But after everyone had gone to sleep, Mitch was just laying in bed thinking about this lamp. And so finally, he snuck out of his bed and went downstairs to the TV room, and he sat on the couch and he just stared at this lamp. And for hours and hours, he just fixated himself on this lamp, watching it kind of morph around and turn upside down and get blurrier and blurrier by the second. The next day, Kayla found Mitch lying on the couch, passed out, and she asked him if he was okay. And again, Mitch didn't tell her about this lamp that was still blurry. He just told her that he wasn't feeling well and he was not going to go to work that day. But Mitch didn't go to work for 3 more days. He just sat on the couch and stared at this lamp. And Kayla obviously picked up on this strange behavior and kept poking and prodding to get more information about what was going on, but Mitch never told her the truth about this lamp. He just kept telling her he felt sick. She urged him to go see a doctor, but Mitch told her it would be fine, he'd get better. And then over time, as this lamp continued to morph and get bigger and get stranger and stranger, Mitch suddenly was unable to respond to his wife. He became totally unresponsive. And so obviously his wife became desperate and called the doctor. And as
Was there even a lamp? Just saying. Was he just fixated on a spot and there wasn't even a lamp in the first place? That would be trippy. Can you imagine seeing someone just fixated on a spot or on an object for like days, literal days? At any point in time, did his brain go, I've been kind of like staring at this morphing lamp for a while now. Something ain't right. Like, you know what I mean? At what point did he check out and just, lose a grasp of, I guess, time? I don't know.
unresponsive. And so obviously his wife became desperate and called the doctor. And as she's on the phone with the doctor trying to get advice about what to do, Mitch realizes the lamp is now growing in leaps and bounds. And before long, the lamp is the entire size of the room, and all he can see is the red color of this lamp. And then Mitch starts to hear these voices, these screams coming from somewhere in the distance. No. And then he feels this blinding pain in his head. And then he opens his eyes and he looks up and he sees he's laying on the sidewalk next to one of the buildings at his college in Louisiana. And surrounding him is this crowd of people with wide eyes that are staring at him. Mitch had no idea what was going on, and so he naturally just began scanning the crowd, looking for Kayla and his kids to try to figure out, how he got here. But before he could ask any questions and before he could find his wife and kids, a police officer ran through the crowd, picked him up and ran him over to his police car, put him in the back, and then began driving away. And so while Mitch is in the back of this police car, he turns to the officer and he says, "What's going on?" And the officer would tell him he was attacked by a huge college football player. He got hit in the head and he fell backwards and he hit his head again and he fell unconscious. Mitch asked the officer where his wife and kids were, and the cop said he had no idea. And that's when it clicked for Mitch. The lamp wasn't real. Neither was his wife, neither was his daughter, neither was his son, neither was his life. For the past 10 years, it was all a hallucination while he was unconscious after getting attacked. Mitch was brought to the hospital where he would make a full physical recovery, but after being released, he was horribly depressed, and he had to get intense therapy to basically grieve for the loss of his family that never existed. These days, Mitch says he can barely remember what his family even looked like, but periodically in his dreams, he will catch a glimpse of his son in his peripheral vision, and his son is perpetually 5 years old, and he's trying to talk to his father, but Mitch can never understand what he says.
Dude, you got swapped the fuck out of a timeline. That's it. I don't know. You touched something, you ticked someone off in your work, you did something, and they sent you back. They sent you back to an alternate timeline. They erased you know how they have those stories where, or whatever, they say, nobody will remember you existed. They basically like delete you from people's lives, and all of a sudden no one knows who you are and that you've never met them before. And it basically erases all the things. Now, here's my question. So in the literal couple minutes that he was down and out, right? He hallucinated 10 years, but he didn't age. That's insane. That's poor guy. I mean, poor guy, right? Right? But was it a hallucination, or did he go into an alternate universe and then come back? Have you seen The Magicians? Just saying. I'm just saying. That's crazy. I did not expect that. That was great. I didn't expect that at all.
In 2007, Brett Ryan was a charming 26-year-old man living in Toronto, Canada. He was known as an extremely friendly guy who was always smiling ear to ear with his trademark grin. In his spare time, he could be found at children's hospitals reading to sick kids, or at the community center volunteering as an umpire for Little League baseball games. But behind his seemingly perfect exterior, behind the scenes, Brett was struggling. He had to move back in with his parents after dropping out of college and racking up over $60,000 of debt. While his friends graduated graduated
Fucking
college
college.
and went on to begin their careers in medicine and
I'm not gonna lie to you, student loans, don't get me wrong. I mean, of all the loans you could possibly have, they're the least terrible, I guess. I'm still paying mine off from like 20 years ago. And you know why? Because I was broke for like the majority of my adult life. I'm talking absolutely like I'm lucky I still had the lights on type broke, like terribly broke. And so it just lingered. Anyway, but Lord have mercy, you can't declare bankruptcy and get rid of them. They haunt you forever. And they're like, sure, take money. Take my money. They want you to get a loan. And you know what? Some people collect degrees. Some people do that. I understand it. I respect it. If a degree helps you in your field of work, however, experience trumps a degree, in my opinion. I think companies that prioritize a degree over experience aren't a company I would want to work for anyway, really. But that's just sad to like rack up 60 grand and not even graduate is insane. That's the slap in the face. I didn't graduate. I had my kids. Like I went that route. It's a slap in the face 20 something years later to still have this stupid loan, and it's a smaller compared to like 60 grand. It's a small loan. It's not small anymore, but I'm just saying it's slap in the face. It's like, really? And you didn't even get anything out of it.
of debt. While his friends graduated college and went on to begin their careers in medicine and finance and education, Brett was only able to get a job as a part-time house painter. Brett felt like he had a lot of potential that he was squandering, but he felt like the debt that he had racked up was really his roadblock between him and the life he was supposed to have. And so instead of working hard and making some money to pay down his debt, he decided to come up with an absurd get-rich-quick scheme that
anyone that says that phrase or phrases it like that, something is between me and, the life I'm supposed to have. That's an entitled statement. And I understand that, in this context, it's just word choice. But the point is that anyone that's sitting there like, well, I'm supposed to have this life. And then the flip, something is blocking me. Yeah, bitch, you're blocking you. You are blocking your own blessings. You are not achieving what you want to achieve to get where you want to get. No one, for the most part, except I know there's extreme in different circumstances, but for the most part, no one's like stopping you from attempting to achieve your goals. I just hate when people are like, something's stopping me from living the life I'm supposed to have, like as if it's already there and you're entitled to it. I hate that. Work for what you want, Took me a long time to get where I'm at. And now I'm not even 60,000 a year, 100,000 a year, like disposable income type shit,
some money to pay down his debt, he decided to come up with an absurd get-rich-quick scheme that actually kind of worked. On October 20th of that year, Brett walked into a bank near his home, and he had hospital bandages wrapped around his head and his face, and his left arm was in a sling. Then he walked up to one of the tellers, and he handed her a note that just said, "I have a gun underneath this sling, give me $2,000. And the teller very quickly complied, and she gave him a little over $1,000. That was all the money she had. And Brett took the money, turned around, and calmly walked out of the bank. And he got in his car, and he got home, and he was totally exhilarated, and he's half expecting the police to just show up at his front door, but they never did. He was never caught. And after
let's go rob a bank. I had this business idea, to make money and to like have a fulfilling and rich life. Let's rob a bank. That said no one except him. Said no one ever except him. That's funny as shit. Get rich quick. Yeah. Be rich in prison.
Police to just show up at his front door, but they never did. He was never caught.
Of course.
And after that, he was hooked. For the next 8 months, Brett robbed a dozen other banks in the area, stealing almost $30,000. He became so confident in his ability to steal without getting caught that he began dressing up in these ridiculous outfits that included this huge, obviously fake beard. And in fact, the media dubbed him the fake bearded bandit. The reason Brett wasn't getting caught is because the police would get his fingerprints at the crime scene, online, but because he did not have a criminal record, his prints were not in the database. And so the police basically just had to set up and hope to catch this guy in the act. And in the summer of 2008, they finally would catch the fake bearded bandit. At Brett's trial, dozens of his friends wrote letters of support to the judge saying that Brett was actually a great guy, that this was a product of desperation and a total break from his normal character. And some of the organizations that he volunteered with did the same thing, writing
It was a break from his normal character the first time. I mean, I'll give you the second time. But to do it consistently over a course of time, get the fuck out of here with that. Get out of here with that. Oh, it's a break from his character. No, he's turned this into his character. He's decided this is the way he wants to go. Is that, like I said, like a impulsive thing once, maybe twice, but consistently, that is a whole ass choice. You've lost the whole entire sympathy vote. You shouldn't get any sympathy. You're making a choice. Anyway, that's how I feel. You don't have to agree with me.
From his normal character. And some of the organizations that he volunteered with did the same thing, writing letters to the judge saying what a meaningful contributor Brett was to the community. When Brett spoke at his trial, he was incredibly remorseful and said he had allowed his debt to get totally out of control and that admittedly he had not handled it well. And so the judge took all of this into account, all the letters of support and Brett's overall appearance in court, and he decided that this was indeed a break from character and that Brett was actually a very promising young man and that he did not deserve the harshest penalty. And so Brett was sentenced to just under 4 years, which considering the crime was a very lenient sentence. And so Brett went to jail, but then less than 2 years later in 2010, he was granted parole and allowed to move back in with his parents. And his parents would say he was a changed man ready for a fresh start. But Brett would find life outside of jail was exponentially harder now that he was an ex-con. It was extremely hard to get a job, which meant he had no income, and without an income, he couldn't pay down all those debts he had, and so he had to declare bankruptcy. As for life at home, it was very difficult. Brett's family was very embarrassed.
You cannot, unless, now if they're federal loans, if they are privatized loans, you can declare your student loans in bankruptcy. Otherwise, bankruptcy is not going to clear that debt. It's not going to happen. That's $60,000 in student loans, it ain't going away. You might be able to get rid of everything else and then consolidate it down, or like bankruptcy, and then you just have your student loans left. You can't get rid of those. If they're federal, it's not a thing. It's never a thing.
Declare bankruptcy. As for life at home, it was very difficult. Brett's family was very embarrassed about what he had done, and when Brett moved back home, it was obvious that all the neighbors were gossiping constantly about their family. And so Brett and his family actually moved to another Toronto neighborhood just to get away from all of that. But once they settled into this new neighborhood, Brett really knuckled down and decided he was going to get his life together and he was going to do it all on his own. And so he applied to dozens and dozens of jobs all over the place, and finally he was able to get some low-paying work in retail. It wasn't great, but it was a start. And so Brett began working countless hours at this really low-paying job, and his parents noticed how hard he was working to try to get his life back together, and so they decided they would help him out financially so he could re-enroll in college and finish his degree in biophysics. While Brett was in school, he met a woman named Kristen who had a full-time job and lived in this beautiful home, and by and large, she had the life that he wished he could have. And the two of them quickly fell in love, and Brett told her about his criminal past as the fake bearded bandit, and she accepted him, and she didn't judge him, and she said, "I still love you, I still want to be with you." 2 years later, Brett moved out of his parents' house and into Kristen's house, and for once in his life, he felt like his life was going the way it should be. Then, a year later, tragedy struck when Brett's father passed away, and suddenly Brett had to go to his mother's house all the time to try to help her out. And his mother was very appreciative of the time he was spending with her, and so she actually began paying him for the work he was doing around the home. And considering Brett was a broke college student, this was a huge help, and in many ways, it really brought Brett and his mother together. A year later, in 2015, Brett proposed to Kristen, and she said yes. But at the same time, school was getting overwhelming for Brett, and he dropped out. But he was too embarrassed to tell his fiance or his family because everybody thought he was on the right path, and he didn't want to explain why he had dropped out, and so he just pretended to still be in school. Then, in the spring of 2016,
we remember what happens when someone just pretends that they're going to work for an entire lifetime. Or school or whatever. First off, I take issue with when you say like a broke college student. I'm thinking they're like 20. 22. He spent 4 years or 2 years in jail and a while, like in school and then out. So he's probably what, like mid to late 20s, probably. I just, there's something in his eyes. I don't know what it is. When I first saw his picture, I was like, but then they're like, oh, he coaches Little League. And I'm like, I'm not going to say that he looks suspicious because he's working with kids and that. I was like, I don't want the story to go that direction. So I didn't want to will it into existence. But his eyes are very like, I can't explain it. You just get a vibe. I don't know.
Why he had dropped out, and so he just pretended to still be in school. Then, in the spring of 2016, when Brett should have been graduating, he got a very lucky break when a big tech firm in Toronto offered him a job. On paper, Brett should not have gotten this job. He wasn't qualified, he didn't have a degree. But in getting this job, Brett was able to tell his fiance and his family that he had just graduated college, and that was how he was getting this job. His family and his fiance were a little confused why they weren't invited to his graduation ceremony, but nonetheless, they were very excited for him and they took him out and they celebrated. Then, a week after Brett accepted this job, the tech firm rescinded their offer when they discovered Brett was in fact the fake bearded bandit. Now, Brett panicked because this job represented this perfect piece to his web of lies that allowed him to pretend he had his degree and that everything was so great. And so he couldn't possibly tell his fiance and his family that
he just seems this consistent repetitive behavior is like a lack of he doesn't want to take ownership of what's going on in his life. It's, I don't want to say victimhood, but it's almost like everything's happening to him and he's not taking ownership of it. He's not taking accountability for it. And I'm not saying it's his fault. Like maybe circumstances made it so he had to drop out. Maybe he failed out. I don't know. But he's not owning it and he's not admitting it. So he's just lying because he doesn't want anyone to know. He cares more about what people think than he does about actually being successful. As if outside thoughts are going to suddenly make or break him being successful, which is sad. Because, like, you just can't live that way. You just can't. You have to, like, it has to come from inside, right? I don't know. I mean, he's an attractive dude. I'm not saying that matters. He's neither here nor there. I'm just saying it's not like he's like, you know, Mr. Potato Head in a corner somewhere. You're like, you know, he's an attractive guy. Generally, attractiveness and charisma, those put together, you can get you pretty far. I don't know.
And that everything was so great, and so he couldn't possibly tell his fiance and his family that he didn't get this job, and so he decided he would just lie and pretend to go to this job every day. Meanwhile, Brett's mom began bragging to all of her new neighbors about her son Brett, who had really turned his life around. He graduated from college, he got this great job, he's got a beautiful fiance, he's got this wonderful home. Everything is just going great for Brett. At first, Brett was able to push the guilt out of his subconscious and just live this ridiculous lie, but as his wedding day approached, the weight of all these lies and the guilt he felt, it became overwhelming, and practically speaking, he was worried about how he would explain to his new wife why he had no income despite having this full-time job. And so he went to his mother and he told her the truth about dropping out of college, about not getting that job offer, and then he said, "Can you keep all of this a secret? And can you give me a whole bunch of money so I can keep living this lie?" And she said,
did this turn into a stab situation? I don't know. I'm guessing.
"This a secret? And can you give me a whole bunch of money so I can keep living this lie?" And she said, "No. And in fact, you need to tell your fiance that you're lying or I will." This was the worst case scenario for Brett and one that he was not prepared for. He really thought his mom would be like, "Yep, let's do it. Let's keep this thing going." But when she didn't, he didn't really know what to do. He believed if Kristen found out the truth, she would leave him and that would ruin his perfect life. And so he decided he would not tell Kristen. Instead, he would kill his mother. Because he was an ex-con, he couldn't buy a firearm. However, he could buy a crossbow. And so he ordered his crossbow. He watched a couple YouTube videos about how to operate it. And then on one of his trips to his mother's,
he planned it. Like, he didn't just be like, "What? You're not giving me money?" It wasn't that. He literally was like, okay, well, I can't risk her telling my fiance and, you know, Screw her. She didn't give me a whole bunch of money. How dare she make me take accountability for what I'm doing? Like I said, it's all about ownership and accountability. Like, you would be surprised how far you get if you actually just own up to your stupidity and your own mistakes. Once you face your own mistakes, you can go past them. It's when you try to hide them, like me, like just not looking at my bank account because I don't want to know the balance because I know it's a lot worse than I think it is, does not make it better. It feels better for a minute, but he pre-planned this shit. Like, this is ridiculous.
House to help out, he stashed the crossbow and some arrows on a shelf in her garage. Then, when he got home, he began designing these bizarre contraptions that were built out of fans and pulleys and broomsticks that, when turned on, would move around the room and click on his keyboard and turn his phone off and on. It was designed to help him build an alibi when he was out committing murder. His devices would be turning on and off again, giving the impression that he was at home the whole time. On August 25th, 2017, all his preparations were done. He woke up early that morning and he began getting ready for his fake job. At the same time, Kristen was also getting ready for her real job, and then at 7:30, when they were both ready to go, they hopped in their respective cars and headed out for the day. But Brett slowed down at the end of the street and waited for Kristen to disappear around the corner. Brett turned back, went back into his house. He went up to his room and turned on all of his bizarre...
Did no one notice he's like has all these devices? He's created like these gadgets. I'm just saying. It is amazing what links people will go to not be called on their own bullshit.
Turned back, went back into his house. He went up to his room and turned on all of his bizarre alibi contraptions that he made sure were turning off and on his devices correctly. And after a while, once he was confident these devices would work, he hopped in his car and he drove over to his mother's house. He got there around 10 a.m. He walked inside and his mother was sitting in the kitchen, and he approached her about changing her mind about telling the truth to Kristen. But his mother was staunch and she said, "No, I'm going to tell her before your wedding unless you do." And so their exchange got really heated, and before long his mother actually called one of his older brothers, Chris, to come to her house and talk to Brett to defuse this situation.
Oh no,
Brett was furious and stormed out of the kitchen. He grabbed the door that led into the garage and he stormed in to try to get his crossbow off the shelf. But his mother followed after him. Now, the crossbow had not been loaded when he put it up on that shelf, and Brett was not very good at loading it, and it would take several seconds to actually do it. So he's thinking to himself, when I pull that down and begin loading it, she's going to see the weapon, and she's going to run outside before I can get to her. And so when he reached up, he didn't grab the crossbow, he grabbed the arrows. And in a swift motion, he pulled them down, re-gripped them like a knife, faced his mother, and began attacking her viciously. She fell backwards, and a shelf actually landed on top of her, pinning her to the ground. At which point, Brett seized the opportunity. He got up, grabbed a piece of nylon, he wrapped it around her neck, and he suffocated her. As soon as she was dead...
Let me just say something. What a terrible thing to do. There's someone that you love and care for, and you raised, they're your child. You love them wholeheartedly and unconditionally. And you're just doing what's best. You're making, all of us are just stumbling through life. I don't care how old you are. You don't know what's coming today. Things are just going to happen. And you'll be like, well, that happened. You know, we're all learning every single day. None of us know what the hell we're doing. None of us really know what we're doing. And she's like, look, in order to have a good marriage, you just have to own up to your stuff. You have to own up to your bullshit. Just do the right thing. Do the right thing. And then he kills her. Can you imagine what's going through her head as your child takes your life? It's heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking. He gets none of my sympathy. Fuck him. He's a piece of crap. He is a spoiled little narcissistic, or I don't want to throw that word around like that. He's just a spoiled little victim guy. Everything's everyone's fault. Everyone owes him things. He has an opportunity to get a degree. He doesn't want to get it. Something happened, I'm sure. He has bills, but he can't pay them, I'm sure. He has a job, but it gets taken away, because you robbed banks. Valid, right? He doesn't want to tell his fiance because he doesn't want her to be mad at him. She dodged a fucking bullet, man. Is he gonna get his brother too? Because the mom called the brother, right? Which is what started this whole like instant arrow stabby stab. Poor woman. That's absolutely disgusting.
Got up, grabbed a piece of nylon, he wrapped it around her neck, and he suffocated her. As soon as she was dead, Brett pulled her out from under the shelf and dragged her to the side of the garage. He put the shelf back up, and then he began loading his crossbow because he knew Chris, his older brother that his mother had called, was going to be here soon. And so he hid behind the door inside of the garage and just waited. And at some point, he heard Chris's car pull into the driveway. Chris walked into the house. He yelled for his mom. He yelled for Brett, but he didn't get a response. And eventually, Chris made his way to the open door leading into the garage. He stepped inside, and as soon as he did, Brett silently got up behind him, and he fired one shot directly into the back of his neck, killing him instantly. Brett took Chris's body and piled it on top of his mother's, and as he was putting a tarp over top of them, he heard another car pulling into the driveway. It was his younger brother, AJ. Now, at this point, Brett knows he is in too deep and he has to finish the job. And so he doesn't.
So technically, he's kind of some semblance of a family annihilator. Not intentionally, but like he basically took out his family. What a piece of crap. What a steaming pile of crap.
Now, at this point, Brett knows he is in too deep and he has to finish the job, and so he doesn't have time to load his crossbow, and so again, he just grabs one of the arrows and he walks outside and he sees AJ getting out of his car and he runs up to him and he jabs the arrow into his brother's neck. And so they're fighting in the driveway. Meanwhile, Brett's other brother, Lee, who's actually in the house sleeping, he wakes up to the sound of this commotion outside in the driveway. He looks out the window and he sees his brothers fighting, and so he runs downstairs and he comes outside, and at this point AJ is laying on the ground and he's basically motionless, and Brett is standing over him, and Brett turns and he sees Lee in the doorway and he runs off after him. Lee sees his brother running at him and just turns and runs into the house, but he only gets a few feet before Brett jumps on top of them, and then the two of them have this vicious fight where Brett is trying to stab him with the arrows, and they're basically both fighting for their lives. And at some point, after Lee suffered several very deep cuts, he manages to throw Brett off of him, and he runs outside to his brother AJ, who's now crawled all the way to the street. And in fact, AJ had managed to flag down a neighbor and got his neighbor to call the police.
Yay.
As for Brett, after Lee had managed to fight him off and ran outside, he knew he was done. And so instead of chasing his brother outside, he put his arrow down and he walked into the kitchen. He opened up the fridge, he took a bottle of water out, he left the fridge door open and just walked out to the front steps and sat down and drank his water while he waited for police to show up. When they did arrive, his brother AJ died before they could save him. As police were arresting Brett, he kind of casually said, "Yeah, I should have taken AJ to the hospital, I could have saved him. And the other guys in the garage are dead, crossbow to the head. It was me." In court, Brett was extremely remorseful and pled guilty to all of his charges. The judge told Brett that he was appreciative of the fact that he was taking full ownership of his heinous crimes, and that in many ways he was a victim too, a victim of this huge web of lies that Brett just couldn't get out from under. But
what? Look, no. Oh, come on. You're a victim of your own lying ass. No. No. I'm not a sympathetic. Okay. He doesn't deserve a sympathy. I don't give a crap. I've caught myself up in the worst web of lies and trying to hide all sorts of stuff during my in my adult life, to the point where when it all came out I was so embarrassed, and it was just heartbreaking and devastating for me that people could see all the crap that was going on. It was terrible. It was absolutely terrible, and it was embarrassing. And I didn't stab anyone. I don't know. Oh, you poor thing. You poor thing. You you lied to everyone, and then you got stuck trying to keep up with your lies. And it's stressful. It's so stressful. Fuck you. Sorry.
Victim too, a victim of this huge web of lies that Brett just couldn't get out from under.
No.
But nonetheless, Brett was given 3 consecutive life terms, one for each of the murders he committed. The only surviving family member, Lee, the brother who was attacked last and managed to run outside and escape Brett, he said that his life was shattered that day
Of
and
course.
that he can barely go outside because of his extreme post-traumatic stress.
That's
So that's
sad.
going to do it, guys. If you found the secret in today's episode, let us know in the comments what it is and where you found it, so give us the timestamp, and if you're the first to do that, we will pin you at the top of the comment section. If you enjoyed today's video and you haven't done this already, please invite the like button to come over and play Mortal Kombat with you, and when they show up, play real Mortal Kombat with them and uppercut them into the ceiling. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly 3 or 4 video uploads. If you want to get in touch with me, you can direct message me on Instagram or on Twitter. My username for both platforms is the same. It's JohnBallen416. I also have a ton of content over on TikTok where my username is MrBallen. I also have a second YouTube channel called MrBallen Shorts where I post random short videos and lost episodes. If you have a story suggestion, please submit it to our subreddit just called MrBallen. It's linked in the description below. So whether I see you on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Reddit, YouTube, or some combination, just know that I really appreciate your support, and until next time, that's gonna do it. See ya.
Okay, I'm going to tell you that that title was misleading, and here's why. He didn't link Reddit to the story. So now I'm like, wait a minute. By the way, I don't have a Reddit account. I don't use Reddit. So I'm assuming that there's like a whole like thread. Is that what they call it? A thread about that story, and if it's other people have those experiences, if anyone believes it, the theories as to what actually happened to the guy. I'm guessing. So I don't know. Let me know if you understand the title better. I'm assuming that's what that means. Like I said, I don't have a Reddit account, so I don't know. That last guy, screw him. He should be in jail forever. Good. That's the least he deserves. Absolute minimum. Absolute minimum. I don't know why the judge even was like, well, you poor baby. Sure, poor baby. Go to jail. Shut up. Go to your room. Go to your cell. Hell. I mean, it was in the moment, that'd be one thing. It was planned, and he meticulously planned it. And then he went, it's not like it was something like right here, and then he goes stab someone. It's literally, he went to a pre-planned place. Gross. Absolutely disgusting. Anyway, super awkward, unprofessional outro. I really like these. I want to start doing scary stuff though. Okay, I haven't decided. I've never done scary stuff because I don't like scary stuff. You guys didn't see it. You can't see there's the doorknob. Oh wait, right about there. That's the doorknob. Right about here, my daughter went, all I saw was part of her head, her face, out of the corner of my eye. I don't know if you caught it in the video. Scared the shit out of me. Because here I am, it's like this haunting, kind of creepy music. And then I see like a face, and I didn't want to look because I'm like, if that's not her, I'm so fucked. Because this isn't live and no one would know. Anyway, that was fun. Take care of yourselves and each other. Remember that you are valid and you matter. Don't let anyone tell you different. Be kind to each other and to yourself. And own your shit, okay? Okay, let's go. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. I would like to do some scary stuff. Sort of, kind of, sort of, maybe. We'll see. I'm out.